And we're live. It
Awesome.
is April 21st, 2020. It's 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Boris Johnson, despite saying he's not doing any work while he's recuperating from the coronavirus, has scheduled calls with the Queen and with President Trump, which is to say, with the Queen and with the King of Ventilators. We don't have fun anymore. But in lieu of fun, it's pugilism week. And I would say that we have Lisa Page, except that we don't.
Wait, hold on, Ben. I hear something rustling off screen. It's Lisa Page.
It's a Lisa Page sock puppet or paper bag puppet, which is the closest we're going to get.
Hold on, I haven't turned off my stupid virtual background. It's not going to register. There we go.
So I think we owe everybody an explanation. We were intending to have Lisa Page today, and Lisa Page was intending to join us today for an Ask Me Anything Decent. But a funny thing happened on the way to Lisa's Ask Me Anything Decent. An entity, which shall go nameless, to which Lisa has certain professional obligations, apparently afraid of the devastating mayonnaise questions we were going to ask, requested that she not do it. And Lisa, being always conscientious of her obligations to clients, to employers, to other entities, decided that the better part of valor was to respect this particular request. So in her place, we have the Lisa Page. I think it's only appropriate, even though it is not technically a sock puppet, to call it the Lisa Page sock puppet. So let's ask it the mayonnaise question. Lisa Page sock puppet, mayonnaise, yes or no?
Vomit. No. Hate mayonnaise.
All right.
Hate mayonnaise. No. Bad mayonnaise. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. I should try to do a better job of this.
So in the mayonnaise debate, you side with Orrin Kerr over Scott Shapiro?
Strongly. I strongly side in the mayonnaise debate. How do you feel about mayonnaise sandwiches, Lisa?
Wait a minute. Like she just moved the...
I would rather die.
Are there any exceptions to your anti-mayonnaise position?
Yes, tuna fish. So disagrees strongly with eating tuna fish straight out of the can with Orrin, it would appear.
All right, so tuna
fish is an acceptable use.
So you're actually striking a moderate position here, is that right?
I am indeed a moderate.
All right.
Eating out of the can is weird. That's just weird.
Okay, so I think we have now, in the mayonnaise debate, we have three positions. Scott Shapiro's really un-Jewish endorsement of mayonnaise, which, by the way, I mean, I didn't say this while he was on, but that is, pushing the line of what you're allowed to say as a Jew.
What's wrong with mayonnaise and being Jewish?
What's that? No, Jews eat mustard, not mayonnaise.
What's wrong with both of them?
No, I mean, I'm sorry, my people, we don't eat mayonnaise. It's just not, that's just not.
Lisa, have you heard of this?
Well, she's not Jewish.
She says now she's heard of it.
No, I mean, like a Jew who announces the mayonnaise, it's like, I think actually isn't mayonnaise on the Lenny Bruce Jewish and Goyish list? The famous, I think like mayonnaise is specifically listed as Goyish, and then the line is lime jello, very Goyish.
Lime jello is
very Goyish, but I think mayonnaise is on there as listed as Goyish. I'm not making this up.
Okay,
anyway,
whatever.
We have the Scott Shapiro betrayal of his people. I assume he's Jewish, but we have he grew up Orthodox. We have Oren Kerr's don't eat mayonnaise under any circumstances. And we have the Lisa Page sock puppet, which we're going to call a sock puppet for obvious reasons, even though it's a paper bag puppet, whose position is we will eat mayonnaise only with tuna fish.
Lisa, are you insulted by my paper bag depiction of you? I hope not. I've like practiced drawing eyes my entire life on like doodling them on pieces of paper just for this. I thank you. I think you look lovely too. So good.
All right.
Wait, hold on. Ask me what I'm drinking.
What are you drinking, Kate?
This is a new cocktail I made up. It's called the Blood of Lisa Page's Enemies.
And what is in it?
I can't tell you that because I'd have to kill you.
It looks like a Bloody Mary.
It's a Michelada.
All right. Okay. I want to say we have done many inane things in lieu of fun, but interviewing a sock puppet about mayonnaise has got to take the cake.
On my tombstone already. This is the best thing that's ever happened to me.
And we've got
some questions.
We've got some questions, and one of them says specifically, "I'm Jewish and I like mayonnaise."
Thank you.
Another one says, "Is mayonnaise actually treif or just disfavored?" And the answer is no. There's nothing treif about mayonnaise.
Right.
Just culturally not very Jewish. So, like, if anybody who's got some knows some Jewish halachic and cultural history wants to come in and talk about what the relationship between the 12 tribes and mayonnaise is. But I think it's just going to be like it's a kind of goyish thing. It's not like it's nothing especially it's just like it's a very white bread and mayonnaise are kind of like really goyish.
Michael Fromberger writes in to say, to be fair, interviewing sock puppets is basically what Fox News does all day long. So you really can't claim uniqueness here. But not about mayonnaise.
To be fair, when on In Lieu of Fun, we interview a sock puppet. It's a real sock puppet. It's not a human.
We're authentic. We're authentic about our sock puppets.
Exactly. And Kate made this sock puppet with her own hands, and we are getting authentic answers from the sock puppet. When I was a child, my mother took me to a carnival once, and there was a guy who was, screaming the prizes that you could get from throwing things and hitting other things, and he said, "And we have here a real, authentic shark's tooth from a simulated shark." And that's how I learned the verb to simulate. It was the first time I didn't understand the joke. My mother explained to me the joke. And that's what we've got. When we give you a sock puppet, it's a completely authentic, real sock puppet. And here, because we don't have Lisa herself, we have
hi, Molly.
Hi.
Like a surrogate for Lisa. But Molly, that's kind of unfair to Molly because Molly's, among other things, a surrogate.
Except for Erica John.
Yeah, right. So welcome to In Lieu of Fun, Molly John Fast.
Thank you.
The premise of this show is that we're not allowed to have any fun anymore.
Okay.
So every day at 5:00, Kate and I have a Zoom conference, which we live stream to YouTube, and we talk to our friends and have a drink, and we and we sometimes take questions from people in the audience. And
typically this doesn't involve puppetry,
but that's Lisa.
Oh wait, I forgot a really critical element just in case we had to go on a field trip, and I wanted Lisa to be protected, and so I have. Okay, hold on. It's really hard to do this with one hand.
I think I need to tweet this. Can I tweet this?
Yes. Oh, wait.
Am I allowed to? I don't know if I'm allowed. I always get in trouble for tweeting things.
Hold on.
Can I tweet this?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yes.
Tell
Right.
people to join and ask the questions they would have asked to Lisa Page. And between you and me, who know her
This
really
is-
well, and
This
the sock puppet,
this is for safety. This is for. I just want you to know, no N95s in this house. Sorry, Lisa, but we do have this surgical mask, and I hear that you should store N95s in a paper bag. So we're like one step ahead of.
Is it true you should store your M95s in a paper bag?
Yes, that's what you're supposed to do.
That's
what was told us by an emergency room doctor.
that is absolutely correct.
I am in the Wuhan of the epicenter, New York City. So where 1 in 1,000 New Yorkers have died of this.
Is it it's a tenth of
That's
a percent
insane.
now?
It's insane.
I was just
right?
at your house.
Yeah, that's right.
You were my last social engagement.
A lot of people's last social engagement. What we are, 11,000.
Right, which
So-
is about a tenth
And
of a
it's
percent.
and it's really more because there's a lot of like people die. The thing that's amazing, and I was thinking about this today. Wait, are we supposed to be fun?
Yeah, well, we can be,
This is like not.
this is like we let stuff hang out. So like we're doing what we do.
The big change is like for me is I never knew anyone to die like in their house. People die in their houses all the time here.
Oh yeah, there's actually a really beautiful, not to be super dark, but there's a really beautiful, and I actually assign it to my students to read for wills and intestacy, which is called The Lonely Death of George Bell. I should send it to you. Maybe we should post it in the feed or something. It's this gorgeous New York Times Magazine article that just goes through all of like kind of beautifully and sparingly exactly what happens when someone passes away in their apartment without next of kin and all this other stuff, and like how there's like an entire administration built up around this to like deal with it, to like administer the estate and everything.
It is wild. Like the fact that people die in their houses, and then I talked to a friend of mine who's a doctor the other day, and she was saying, because we're in this like lull where it's gotten much better. And so I was talking to her and I said, how's it going? And she said, we no longer go to bed checks and find dead bodies. And I was like, oh. And then I talked to another friend today. I was doing like a parent coffee with one of my kids' schools. And I said, because I know her husband's a doctor, and I said, how is it? And she said, and then she burst into tears, and I didn't know that her husband was in the ICU. So it's really everywhere.
So we have a question from Andrew McMahon, who the floor is yours, Andrew.
So Lisa, here's my question for you. There's a certain level of stupidity that was always lurking behind all the accusations that were coming in your direction. And I'm just wondering, I can't fathom it. Could you fathom it right from the beginning? Did you know how consequential this would be?
All right, so let's, Molly, do you want to give your sense of the answer to that question? I can give mine, and maybe the sock puppet has thoughts.
My take was that she didn't see how she got all the negative stuff, but she didn't realize that there were people who, you have the tutor right now that she sent you a link. Yes, you have to. I forgot. I'm sorry. We have it. It's 5 o'clock, so everything is insane here. It's just insane online. So, and I know you're mad at me. I'm a terrible mother. So what I would say is this. I don't think she understood just how. I think she got the negative right away, because when you have the president trolling you, you get that right away. Like you get the emails, you get the death threats. But I don't think she understood that there were a lot of people in the world who really thought of her as very brave and as like kind of a hero. And so I don't think she had that sense, but it's definitely an interesting thing to be a public servant who had, she didn't go for like, she's really smart and she didn't go for like a corporate firm. Like she went for public service. So that's a certain kind of person. So for that person to end up as a celebrity is kind of, I think, counterintuitive. And so I don't think she totally got it. I don't know if that seems reasonable to you.
Yeah, I think that's right. So the other thing that I think emphasizes the point that you're making in the question is, what is it that Lisa is really accused of by the people who think she's a terrible person? Number one, she's accused of plotting a coup and treason. And that is simply a crazed fantasy. There is no evidence for that. It is not true. And none of the various investigations that have looked at her conduct have accused her of anything like that.
Right.
So she's accused of sending text messages reflecting her negative personal opinions of the president to a colleague.
Right.
And there is no question that she did that. And by the way, people who, I think nobody, including Lisa, would say in retrospect, well, that was a good idea. I'd advise somebody else to do that.
Right.
And number three, she is accused, and often number three is number one, she's accused of having had an affair. And there's an immense amount of, basic shaming that is, and frankly, misogynistic nonsense that underlies that. And, it's not that, for those who are going to say I'm now pro-affair, I'm not, that's not the point at all. The point is, if you publicly shamed everybody in the FBI or any other federal institution who was now or at some point had extramarital affairs, that has never been the standard of public service that engaged in. And by the way, some of us don't think it should be.
Well, can I also get to the idea that I'm really curious about this? Like, I don't understand, besides it being bad to kind of dislike your boss and to talk shit about your boss, right? Or
Trump
whatever.
Wasn't her boss though, right?
Yeah, that's the other thing. That's kind of what I was going to say. He wasn't her boss.
Right.
And also let's say that she's saying stuff that it's about the president. That is like literally why we have First Amendment protections, so that people can express their dissatisfaction with the politics around them, right?
Right, but so I think this issue is genuinely complicated, and I don't want to be flip about it. Yes, FBI employees have First Amendment rights. Yes, they're allowed to express their views to each other. And yes, this is I'm sure a deep, dark secret that'll come to a lot of people's shock to a lot of people. But FBI employees tend not to have high admiration for the people that they're investigating. And that, if you're somebody who the FBI is looking at, it is not remotely surprising that there might be water cooler conversation. Hey, that Kate Klonick, I don't know if we can prove it, but she's a real bad apple.
In that case, isn't this just salacious because she got caught talking shit about her, basically talking shit, not about her manager, not about anyone she reports to, but someone like the CEO of the company or someone on the board of directors. Well, and it's just controversial because people don't it just has always struck me as there's just and I'm not just saying this because she's on the show and sitting next to me on my left hand. it is actually I just don't understand. There's this, and the other thing is who doesn't, I mean, maybe this is too complicated, but honestly, this is the kind of stuff we're great at, I think, and talking about. Why can't we talk about the fact that how government officials all the time take an oath to do one thing and set their personal agendas aside and their
that is the critical point.
Yes, but like judges run
because-
for re-election, they do all kinds of stuff, and then they're expected to set it all aside, and they take money and they're expected to set it all aside and like impartially administer justice. There's no accusation that she, there's something I don't know of, that like she did something that was like impartial or untoward. Is that right?
But I think the problem with all of this is that you guys are having like a normal, sane conversation. And this is Trump. So it's, Trump says things like, she's a traitor, lock her up, right? I mean, and you say, well, how is she a traitor, right? I mean, I know, Lisa, she is so by the book, and she's a lawyer, so she knows what's illegal and what's not illegal. But the reality
I wouldn't actually hold that as like, that's not a one-to-one.
But he has, and she's also from an extremely hardworking background. She's self-made. She's not like a person for whom this was all handed to. So my feeling is Trump just says crazy shit about people. Yeah. And then, he says they should get the death penalty. I mean, it's like to try to argue reality in this situation is like almost not the point.
So I agree with both of you. I think the only reason to argue reality is that the FBI has used statements about reality in order to discipline people, although not Lisa, actually.
Right.
Lisa resigned, but other people, including Pete Strzok, were fired. And so there is an underlying legitimate reality question. Look, I think the answer is if there is if you have people doing all kinds of hallway talk that raise a question of bias.
Right.
And I think it is legitimate in this context, if you see these email chains, to say, well, does this raise a question of bias? To then inquire as to whether any investigation was compromised as a result or corrupted by the personal views of the individuals. That investigation has been done. And the Inspector General found that it had not, did not find that any step taken by Lisa Page or Pete Strzok was materially influenced by their views in any substantial way. So
Not just once, multiple times.
Right. So to me, the question is like, what is the hatred at Lisa directed at? Is it the false claim? Is it driven by the false statement that, she's involved in some coup, right, or treason?
Right.
Is it based on the true fact that she exchanged a bunch of text messages that I'm sure she does not think was the best idea in the world, but that didn't affect any investigation that she was involved in? Or is it based on the fact that she's a youngish woman who rose to sort of meteorically to be the kind of consigliere to the deputy director of the FBI, who was a bit of a power player in the bureau, was extremely effective, and had an affair, and we can shame her about her affair? And I know the answer to this question, what it's about, because I've spent a lot of time in Lisa's Twitter feed looking at the reactions to her. And guess what? It ain't mostly about her choices in life to send text messages that might raise questions about the legitimate work she was doing. It's all about slut shaming and nothing else.
Right. I wrote a piece about this actually for The Beast about Trumpism needs a villain. The best villains for Trump are women of color, like Ilhan Omar is like the trifecta, right? Because she's a Muslim, woman of color, Democrat. But like anyone, any kind of like, I was talking about how he picks on these women at the briefings, but he does really find, and the reality is he just wants to keep that base he has and tries desperately to hold on to them because he can't do anything else. So someone like Lisa, she's the same as Hillary Clinton. It's the same, it's just this villain that he has to have. So
I think that I was asking my question before. Sorry to just really quick, Molly. Like, I think that there's like what I think that you brought up though is you're right. Like, this is a sane conversation. And like, I just wanted to like have the conversation to be totally clear, like, because this is really sad, but I think that like we kind of, I feel sometimes this need to have a sanity check on some of this stuff because I feel like I'm getting gaslit by mainstream media. Like you get gaslit by reading Wikipedia, you get gaslit by doing a Google search on somebody's name. Like they're just hard to sort it all out. And then I'm like reading through and making like logical, like kind of trying to make logical sense out of this when this is all happening. And I was like, this is nothing. This is nothing. Like this is all slut shaming and like craziness and
but that's like the
insanity.
Hillary emails or like, right. I mean, it went through the, you know, are we going to split dessert? But the secret with all this stuff is it's nothing but if you say it enough, it gets obfuscated. So maybe Hunter Biden was doing Burisma, you know, it's just if you keep saying it, you muddle the waters so much that in the end, it's everyone is corrupt. What are you going to do? Might as well just stick with Trump.
All right, so here's my I want to tell the other side of the Lisa Page text messaging stories, the part that never gets told, because this is actually the truth about Lisa Page and texts. And
switching hands.
Breaking news, folks. I'm going to say it. Lisa Page sends the best text messages. And I did not realize that until I started texting with her, you know, probably about a year ago now. And she's hilarious.
Also, Peter Strzok also sends really good text messages. They're both hilarious.
They're funny people. They're witty. They're really smart. But Lisa Page,
I also think I'm quite funny.
So Lisa,
she doesn't. She's very humble.
I know. I know this from literally talking to her over text messages for 48 hours. And like both of the things that you said are true.
She's very self-effacing, which is
so. Here are my two Lisa Page text stories. The first time I met her, I gave her my email address, and we exchanged email addresses, and then we exchanged phone numbers, and I sent her a text that evening that just said, you know, just making contact this way. She sent me back one line that says, I'm comfortable with text messages, which was not the exchange I was expecting to get from Lisa Page. That was the first thing. Second thing is a few weeks ago, I was thinking about this is before we stopped ever seeing anybody ever again in the world. I was thinking about having a barbecue at my cabin in the woods, and I texted Lisa that I was thinking about doing it to try to figure out like what would be a good day, that kind of thing. And she just sent me a note that said, thanks, great. That sounds great. I'll bring text messages. So, you know, I just want to say, if you have the opportunity to exchange text messages with Lisa Page, it's actually, she's a very fun text correspondent.
Yeah, no, she's great. I mean, and what's happened to her has happened to so many really good, hardworking government. I mean, so like, I feel like the tragedy of all of these people is twofold. Like, he's ruined the government and he's ruined these people's lives. Not to make it unfun.
But I mean, yeah, I mean, I do. Well, we'll let James go ahead and ask his question.
James McGuckin, the floor is yours. But you got to unmute yourself. You really got to unmute yourself. All right.
Oh, he's gone.
Let's try that one more time.
So, Molly, you're quickly figuring out that this show is like, I like to think of it as a mix of Cocktail Party and USO and Wikipedia, and then also kind of like a radio talk show.
All right, take two. James McGuckin, the floor is yours, really. All right.
I don't know that we know that this person is a person.
You know, maybe the person.
I think they might not be a person.
We gave him his chance.
Oh, I see.
Right.
You can answer the questions here. Oh, wow. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, to Molly's point, though, I think everything she said is completely correct about who the president targets. But I think that also what happened to Lisa is like part of it's a part of a phenomenon that happens to a lot of people on the internet, that there is just this mass shaming and this information that moves so quickly, faster than human beings can possibly like kind of contemplate it or figure out the real facts or make sense of everything they're getting. And so like the narrative just becomes the truth. And so I had an interesting question for both of you, which a friend brought up to me today. She was like, do you think that the ability of like, so Lisa, when she did come on very briefly to the show yesterday, was like sitting with her ear pods in at like her kitchen table, you know, like being a normal person and like a t-shirt. And like, there was kind of just this amazing, like she wasn't made up for TV. There was nothing like we're all doing right now. Right. And like, I was like, wow, like what a great, like, this is great. Like, we can all just see that this is like, it would, if people could have seen that Lisa was a person, would they have piled on in this way? And this is like a point that I've made from like cognitive psychology research a number of times in virality, which is like, if you confront your accusers and point out to them that you're human and show that you're being harmed by this thing, people stop because they just see you as this avatar that they can project everything onto. But the second that like you kind of humanize yourself, so like my question, I'm getting to it, is like basically like out of this pandemic, when everyone's working from home, when there are no more lines between like professional and like whatever, we've had guests on, Molly, that like pick up their kids and put them on their lap. And like you were just talking to your kid.
Be coming soon, yes.
Yeah, and like that's all normal. And like Ben couldn't stop petting Gergie because Gergie had just had surgery. And like, these are life things that like happen to people. And like, now we're having to see people's lives and like understand them and exercise empathy and everything else. And I just kind of wonder, do you think it's going to last? Do you think it's going to change some of this stuff? Do you think this is going to be a new moment?
I think that Trump's people are not, I don't think you can negotiate with them. I think that group is, if Trump tells them something is real, it's real. And if Trump tells them something is not, I just think you can't even try to explain to them that Lisa Page is a real person. I mean, look at how they are with, if you're an enemy of Trumpism, you're an enemy of Trumpism. And that's it, period, paragraph. And I don't think it matters because I don't think those people are the people, that's just a different world. But I think that, once you get to, my whole thing with Lisa was just explaining to her that the MAGA media that has been so obsessed with her, the people who really will appreciate her haven't even been exposed to her, really. And so that was my argument to her, was just that there's a whole group of the world that don't participate in Trumpism, and that's more of the world than what does participate in Trumpism. And so those people, you have to, those are your people. So that's my feeling, but I don't know.
I largely agree with that. I do think, though, that, Lisa's first foray into public at all which was how Molly connected with her, was a photograph that I tweeted of her at the National Security Laws, the ABA Standing Committee on Law and National Security's conference. And, I tweeted a picture of her at the conference. And, I would say the first hour after that, before the MAGA folks got their hands on the tweet and it turned really ugly, was an incredible outpouring from a very large number of people, including Molly, who immediately texted me, and asked to be put in touch. But I do think that one of the things that I found striking about that initial reaction and the subsequent reaction by the Trump folks was very, very ugly. But the initial reaction was a whole lot of people who were, both having some aspect of this story I really identify with, but also a group of people who were like, oh my God, that's a real person.
Yeah.
Which is a slightly different reaction, but I think also a very powerful one. And, we're playing with a sock puppet here. But for a lot of people, Lisa Page and Pete Strzok, and for that matter, Andy McCabe and Jim Baker to a lesser extent. But, all of these, Bruce Orr, all of these people are just names, and they're names that we've attached a certain set of positive or negative valences to, almost entirely depending on whether we support or oppose the president. And the point that I was trying to make is, no, actually, Lisa Page is a person, she's a person who actually, has a professional life, who has a personal life, who did not ask to be a public name, who doesn't really want you to be talking about her. And that, she doesn't exist for the purposes of your making whatever political point you want to make by invoking her name. And I think that actually turns out to move a lot of people, because I think the fear that you wake up one day and the world is devoted to shaming you is actually something that a lot of people have lurking in their, the lizard part of their brains. And
completely.
And
I just get people doing that to me. So I don't, and I don't know, for whatever reason, no, because the MAGA people hate me. But and it's that same vitriol, even if it's not, so I just delight in it. But I know that normal people don't.
Normal people, did not. You and I both chose to be public-facing people, exactly. And Kate did. And
well, a little bit. I still am not quite as public-facing as you guys, but
no, but you write for the New Yorker. I mean, you're a prominent person. You're not on.
If I ever get this next draft in, I will continue to write for the New Yorker. I'm like a little distracted lately, making puppets.
So we have a question from the Big Blue blogger, whose name one day I will learn, but I don't actually want to know, because I just like calling him the Big Blue blogger, or sometimes the Big Blub blogger. Big Blue blogger, what's on your mind?
Hey guys, great show, great puppets. A question for Molly, really, about the impact of Trump's hate and the whole right-wing hate machine. I'm looking ahead to the next Democratic administration. I'm hoping they can staff it with a lot of rock stars at the top level, like Sally Yates, Tony Blinken, and then the second level with people I probably have never even heard of. But I'm wondering, how many of those folks are just getting scared away for good, and they're going to stay out there at Brookings with you? Any ideas?
Well, I think Ben is actually probably has more of a hand into what is actually going on there. But I would say, from the people I've talked to, I think a lot of people would like to come back if it's available to them. But Ben really has more of an insight into that. I'm in New York, but I would say that I think, especially, if Biden wins, let's not get overconfident here, and if we're all alive in November, I do think, he also is he's very involved in a lot of different Democratic administrations, because he's been around for a long time and there's a lot of goodwill towards him. So I would guess that a lot of those really, and because things have gotten so dire with the Trump administration, my guess is a lot of those people will come back, but Ben probably can speak to that.
I actually think that's exactly right. If anything, I think it may be understated. So look, there's a group of people, the atmosphere is incredibly toxic.
Yeah.
And anybody who's considering, a position that requires Senate confirmation has to imagine a long delay and a toxic hearing and it's different depending on which party controls the Senate, of course, but that's an ugly process, and one that, a lot of people get hurt in. That said, if Joe Biden were to manage to beat Donald Trump, and he were to pick up the phone and say to any of 50 people, I need you to be my attorney general, I think the enormity of the moment, the emergency of the moment, would and should make it extremely difficult for people who are patriots to say no to that. And Joe Biden would come in. I know he's just been through a bruising primary and all that, but he would come in, if he were to win in the fall, with an enormous amount of prestige, a lot of goodwill, including among, Molly and my friends in the Never Trump conservative movement, of which neither of us is really part, but we're both we're both non-conservative members of the Never Trump conservative community.
Never Trump adjacent.
Yeah, exactly. We're Never Trump kosher.
Right.
And I think the prestige of, and remember, like Biden, for all his quirks, and he is quirky, is somebody who's been around a long time. He's made many, many more friends than enemies, and people feel warmly toward him, including, by the way, you saw that in the different reaction between Bernie Sanders and Bernie Sanders' supporters, right? Bernie was much more gracious toward Biden than he was toward Hillary, and that reflects the fact that Biden is actually well liked, including by people like Bernie Sanders. And so I do think, I would be shocked if Sally Yates were to say no if Joe Biden were to ask her to be Attorney General. And you can replace Sally Yates with any of the other people that you imagine to be on a sort of AG short list, whether it would be the Preet Bhararas or the David Chris's or the thinking out of the box, the Chuck Rosenbergs of the world. I just don't think people would want to say no to Joe Biden in a moment like this if he were actually able to defeat Trump.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think that he's very well liked. He's had all of this terrible, terrible personal tragedy. And then he also has a very delightful personality. The one thing I would say too about, and goofy, which I personally, as someone who's goofy myself, enjoy. The one thing I would say about him is, with Bernie, is that he did a lot better against Bernie than Hillary did. Which also, I think, is one of the reasons why Bernie was so, there were these districts in Michigan where he did, 20%. He just did a lot better than she did. So I also think Bernie reflected that, I think they were friends from the Senate, but I also think he ultimately did reflect that.
I think that's right. I also think, honestly, when you say if he wins, that covers a lot of ground, and it matters how he wins. So if you imagine he scrapes by and they spend 2 months deciding whether, millions of illegal votes were cast to enable his win, right? And it's a kind of contentious exit, and it's, very close, and the country is very divided. Then staffing the administration may be a harder thing than if he were, say, to win very decisively. His win was a repudiation of Trump and Trumpism, and then he comes in with enormous prestige, and that's a very different picture from the point of view of staffing. The one other point I would just make is, don't underestimate ambition in this. These are positions that people have dreamt about since they were little children. And it's very hard to turn down that kind of power, and people don't do it that often. And I think the the fondest dream of many lawyers might be to of ambitious lawyers of a government service bent might be to come in after Bill Barr and have to clean up the place.
Well, that's the other thing is my question, because I don't really know the ins and outs the way you two do, because I'm neither a lawyer nor a person who's ever worked in government. But won't there be sort of Nuremberg style trials?
No.
But you know what I mean, for like all
I
the—
do know what you mean, but that's not what typically happens. I mean, I was working at Talking Points Memo and covering the end of the Attorney General firing scandal before I went to law school. And then, so I was like, but I was like just deep in like the weeds of like the Inspector General's and the, yeah. And and then it all just transitioned and nothing happened. Everything just went back to being what it was. And like, that's exactly, there was reform. I mean, there was also like, I don't actually know exactly how the fallout happens for career versus political appointments to the various branches, or to the various kind of in the various offices. It like varies from office to office, how many have each and like how long they are and everything like that. And like, but my understanding, Ben, is that like, well, there certainly weren't any hearings. People just left their jobs and like people were like wanted to move on, right? I mean, am I misremembering?
That's right. I mean, when the Trump administration leaves office, whether in 9 months or 4 years and 9 months, there will be retroactive investigations to do.
Right.
And some of them may be substantial and serious. And look, I mean, the Mueller report left open a bunch of potentially live prosecutorial questions with respect to obstruction, which Bill Barr has closed, but a subsequent attorney general might plausibly decide to not credit that and relook at it. So I do think you're going to have a series of questions. There's some substantial tax questions as well. There's a bunch of questions that implicate or involve the president and his immediate family.
Right.
I am not aware of any substantial questions that involve, the Justice Department itself, at least at a criminal level, just at a grotesque mismanagement of discretionary calls. That is a very serious issue, but that's the kind of thing you deal with by staffing the Justice Department differently and by actually staffing it differently at the most senior levels. So I don't expect, I mean, to be honest, the question that I think is the more difficult one is the question of sort of social lustration. So what happens when Stephen Miller comes out of government and Kellyanne Conway come out of government and they want to be part of Washington society.
Right.
And, the traditional Washington approach to that is, there's politics and then there's Washington social life, and they're different. And, of course, the most famous example of that is Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Antonin Scalia were best friends and, opera buddies. And I think this administration is going to, it's going to be very hard for Washington culture to assimilate some of these people on a I disagree with your politics, but you're welcome at my table kind of basis. And that's a big cultural change for the city. When I went to the Washington Post, it was still like a famous thing that Kay Graham, the publisher of the Washington Post, was like a close friend of Nancy Reagan's when the Reagans were in office, and that they socialized together. And nobody thought that corrupted the Washington, maybe people did, but that was like a part of the culture of the city. And I'm not going to be socializing with Stephen Miller and Kellyanne Conway, as fond as I am of her husband.
Can I ask if both of you, I mean, I think that you're both too young for this, but like, I'm a huge fan of Kate Graham and the whole and everything coming out of like the Watergate scandal and all of that writing. But like that actually strikes me as like that last real shaking of, or the first real shaking of like the presidency, like the real kind of like come to Jesus moment for the presidency. And I wonder how that changed the culture of the city.
Well, the one thing I would just say, just to piggyback on what Ben is saying quickly, is that I don't think Trump is going to Florida, right? There's no way he's staying. He's out, right? He doesn't want them. They don't want him. I'd be surprised if like his sons are in New York and those guys, you never saw them anyway. Ivanka will come back to New York, whether polite society embraces her is anyone's guess. I certainly know that a lot of people I know who were once her friends are not her friends anymore. But who knows? There are a lot of very sort of gross people who will be friends with anyone who's famous and wealthy. So that makes that she'll be fine. I don't stay up at night worrying about any of these people, but certainly not. But the question will be like, I feel like the Larry Kudlows and the like Stephen Miller. Yeah, I mean, Stephen Miller is atrocious, but like, I feel like he's an easy no. But like a Larry Kudlow or the people who are like not known as, who will say as soon as this is over, well, I was there because I tried my best. Those people, I think, will really be the sort of litmus test.
John Bordeaux, the floor is yours for a question.
Good afternoon. Thanks. I think one concern I have is people that are still in government and positions looking at the experiences of Lisa Page and others and wondering, will they make different decisions to avoid that fate? So I guess my question I wouldn't put Lisa directly on the spot, so I'll put the sock puppet on the spot for this. Is there any advice for people who are being targeted or may soon find themselves in that position?
Great question. Does the sock puppet have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, the sock puppets has thoughts that are basically, you are stronger than you think you are. And it's very true, even if you don't know it at the time. And of course, there were days that, I wanted to curl up and die and truly just disappear and die. But now that you've crested that hill and you're on the other side, I'm really proud almost of what I've withstood. And, I think that there's some identification with other people who've gone through this type of shame and this type of, these types of moments that are in the public eye right now. And I think that, I think that's basically it.
There you go. Back to the point about, one thought about that question. There is an increasing, the list of people who have some version of Lisa Page effect, right? Includes Alex Vindman, it includes, Fiona Hill, it includes, Masha Yovanovitch. It is a fairly long list at this point of people who I think in one way or another do know that they're welcome in polite society in a way that the Larry Kudlows and Stephen Millers are not. And that, when this period is over, the world is going to have very good things to say about the Masha Yovanovitches and the Fiona Hills and the sins of having sent text messages will pale in comparison to the honorable service that people in the FBI performed. And so, like, I do think if you're Alex Vindman today, you do know that you're right? And like, I think you walk around with a kind of confidence that the price that you're paying, whatever it is a price for having done the right thing. And, I wonder what Larry Kudlow is telling himself. And I don't think he gets that. Because I think in his heart, he knows he's not.
But I do think it has already worked. Trump has already had a chilling effect on whistleblowers and the federal government. And that's why you see you're not seeing a lot of the whistleblowing you should be seeing. I mean, the truth is, Trump is stealing supplies from states. He's putting blockades, and you're not seeing that from the government, the inside, you're seeing it from the states. And so that it's already worked, what he's done to the federal government. He's silenced people. There's a lot of rolling over that you wouldn't otherwise see. I mean, if Trump hadn't gone after the Ukraine, every time there's been a scandal, it's because someone's put their neck out, right? Ukraine, because someone said, hey, this isn't the way government's supposed to, government is not, we're not Russia. This is not a kleptocracy. And Trump has gone after those people. So I do think it's worked. And it's certainly worked with the Republican senators. I mean, those.
So that is the place where it has worked most dramatically. I mean, the dissenting, the transition of the Republican Party has been perfect and complete, with the solitary exception of Mitt Romney.
Right.
And in that area, I think the ideological purification of the federal government bureaucracy has not been successful in the same way. And if you have any doubt of that, just go to, I live in Washington. My whole environment is permeated by the federal government workforce. There is nowhere where Donald Trump will get fewer votes in the fall than in the area than in DC and the parts of Maryland and Virginia that people are commuting to the federal government to work in the government.
And we saw this in the 2017 Virginia state stuff. Like, he has lost all of that state house,
Right.
He has, the one thing I think that is calming to me is that he has really lost every election. He has, he lost the midterms. He lost that Wisconsin, Supreme Court judgeship during a pandemic when they made it as hard as possible. And there were 5 polling. People really, the vitriol. I know he has this base that will die for him, but the rest of us really are not having it.
Sorry, my hand's getting sweaty in this paper bag. I'm gonna switch it again. Okay.
All right, I suppose we should wrap.
Yes.
Yeah. I would like to close with some final words from Lisa, which I think are kind of perfect given our entire conversation. What?
From the puppet, that is.
Oh, from Puppet Lisa.
Yeah.
Obviously, because real Lisa's not here. So Puppet Lisa. And so Puppet Lisa just wants to say that courage in the face of wrongdoing is always worth it.
That's good.
I think those are good rules to live by.
Very, very, very.
To defy power which seems omnipotent, to love and bear, neither to change nor falter nor repent. This is to be good, great and joyous, beauteous and free.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah, it's from Shelley. It's the last stanza of Prometheus Unbound.
Molly, thank you so much for coming on in lieu of fun show. I almost every time we say the name of our show, I almost call it in lieu of show, which
In
is
lieu of
also
show?
that.
In this case, it's
so
in lieu of
underproduced.
Lisa.
And it's like kind of in lieu of show. But thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. I'm sorry I'm not quite as exciting as Lisa Page, but I have talked about her enough. So
You were amazing.
Yeah.
This was so
Yeah,
fun to have you.
It was great. And we should have you back for
When you're
you know,
not a Lisa Page.
This is pugilism week. So
Yeah.
if you have somebody you want to like have a knockdown drag out fight with on in lieu of fun, you know, challenge them on Twitter and they will meet you in single combat on in lieu of fun.
That sounds terrifying. I'm like very not confrontational. I'm very non-confrontational, but yes, I would be happy to do that. So fantastic.
Thanks, Molly.
Thank you. Bye.
So that's the last episode. It's our latest episode of In Lieu of Fun. We are so grateful to Lisa Page for appearing as a puppet, except not actually appearing as a puppet. Like actually, it was just Lisa Page puppet. Don't yell at us. No one yell at us, please. And yeah. We have, what do we have up tomorrow? It's Pugilism Week.
I'm not sure we have scheduled tomorrow's fight yet.
We haven't scheduled tomorrow's fight yet. I think that we have some pretty good contenders though.
Yeah.
So to speak. So we will post who the final matchup is tomorrow morning, tomorrow early afternoon. As usual, thank you. Oh, we are looking for taglines. I've decided that we need a tagline. Right now, the best contender for tagline, why is Lisa talking? Lisa, stop talking over me. Okay. The best contender for tagline is soft politics and hard liquor in lieu of fun. And but I am open for other things. I'm pretty sure that's like too hackneyed.
I think it's going to be that's going to be the placeholder until we come up with
it's something. A good placeholder. And then like really disappointingly, I'm drinking beer. So, but you know what? In lieu of fun, in lieu of scotch, Michelada, the blood of your enemies, the blood of Lisa Page's enemies. I'll toast to that.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.